the project would take and just some of the traffic flow patterns, so you have an idea of when it might get up to your property, what you can expect for construction traffic, roadways, and accessibility to driveways. So we'll cover all of that, but when we're done, we'll kind of take a break and come back with you individually. So Jeff, why don't you start introducing yourself, and we're just going to go down the group here so you can learn everyone's role and the responsibility.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming to begin with. I'm Jeff Penman. I'm the city administrator for the city of Sandwich. So very much appreciate everybody coming. Hoping we can answer your questions tonight and pass that along to your neighbors if you want to take a couple extra pamphlets. They may cover this, but I think the plan is to try and put those indoor at people's homes so that they have the information. So we're ready to go. But I'll turn it over to Troy Strange from HLR, who's our design engineer.
Good evening, folks. I'm Troy Strange from Hampton, Lanzini, and Renwick. Our office is up in Elgin. I was the project manager for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 design, so we've been working on the design for this project for the better part of 2 years now. I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Kurt Detman, I'm the city engineer, work with the EI, so you guys have probably seen me before.
Hi, my name's Don Reba. I'm with HLR as well, just like Troy. Troy's job was getting the project through IDOT during design. My job is to get it through IDOT during construction and after construction, so I'll be doing the administrative stuff. Got a man by the name of Sergio Perez. He'll be our field guy. He's on vacation, lucky him. He's off for 2 weeks, so he could not make it today. We also invited a contractor today, and they were not available also, so you've got pretty much just us.
Would you like us to run through the kind of the scope of the
Yeah, why
project?
don't you run through the scope of the project and everything?
Sure. So in general, what the scope of the project is it's a full reconstruction, or I would say mostly a full reconstruction. We're not quite replacing all of the curbs and all of the sidewalks, but a good portion of the failed curbs and sidewalks. We're going to be reconstructing the pavement, which entails, it's kind of a unique process. It's called full depth reclamation. It's basically rototilling the road and materials that has to be hauled off-site. We're also in advance of the reconstruction of the road. We're replacing all of the major utilities, or at least most of them, between 2nd Street and Arnold, water main specifically. And then there's some storm sewer throughout the project. I would say the lion's share of the storm sewer is being replaced. There's a few small sections of sanitary sewer that currently have some pitch issues that are also being replaced. Water services for all the homes that are on the new section of water main are going to be transferred to new services. There's a few lead service locations that are going to be replaced all the way into the homes. And Kurt will elaborate a little bit on the locations of those, and those people will get a little bit more direct coordination when the time comes for that. We're hoping to do this in parts of 2 construction seasons. We're going to reconstruct the entirety of the west side of the roadway this summer, and then all of the underground utilities this summer. And then we're going to get the first asphalt layer on the west side complete, and then we're going to close up the roadway to hard pavement so that we don't have any open gravel over the winter. And we're going to have it reopened to 2-way traffic through the winter. My apologies, that reminds me, we are going to do this project in stages. So within the next month or so, we are going to switch Main Street to a 1-way detour northbound, which goes on Knights, Castle, and then Center. And then again, once we finish up all the pavement and utilities on all the utilities and all the pavement on the west side late this fall, and close it back up, close up the pavement, we're going to open up the 2-way traffic. And then in the spring, we're going to reconstruct all the roadway, all the concrete, all the sidewalks on the east side of the road. And then once all that is done, we're going to do all the final surface lift of asphalt, the smoother lift of asphalt that matches the curbs. We're going to do that at the very end of the project, and then along with punch list and restoration work. And the completion date for the contract is mid-June of 2016. So there's 2 completion dates. There's an interim completion date in November of this year, and then there's a full final completion date in June of 2026.
Add a few things. So one of the key things, and maybe Eric, you can help as well, as Eric's with Shaw Media. We did notice that when the Latham Street construction happened, we closed lanes and people still insisted on driving the wrong way. We do not want that to happen. There were some very dangerous incidents that occurred just because people didn't want to respect that. We don't want to jeopardize anybody's life or property in the process, so that'll be, and we'll do that through the whole project just for safety reasons. That was an ongoing issue that some people just felt that they were immune from anything just because they lived there.
If I may add, and to that point, as far as the staging of the project and managing traffic and kind of just the overall disruption during the project, there's a few different things that we're doing for this project. Last year, there was a lot of open gravel that was a little bit, messier, dustier, what have you. We've got some temporary patching that we're going to do for all the utilities that are getting across the open side during stage one, so that we don't have to have these open trenches and patches of aggregate. We're going to, pretty much as soon as the utility installations are completed, we're going to patch those with asphalt patches to reduce the noise, reduce all the divots in the roadway, and just keep the ride on the open side smoother. And then we've also got pay items in the contract, line items for temporary accesses to all the driveways, all the commercial entrances, and then all the street crossings. And what those are used for is we've got a little bit of a different problem, or challenge, I should say, with Main Street. And in Latham, we were not matching curb, or at least not nearly as much curb. We are milling pavement before we rototill the roadway. So to get back up to the driveways with that 5-inch difference of our milling depth, we have items in the contract to ramp up temporarily while we're in stage so that people are able to get into and out of their driveways throughout the course of construction. So I believe we've got a really good plan in place to minimize the disruption and allow people to access their properties without nearly as many challenges as we otherwise could have.
So something I wanted to cover with you guys. First things about lead service lines, Troy had mentioned. So I'm just going to read off the addresses we have for the lead service lines. There's 7 locations on Main Street. If you're here, you can certainly raise your hand and we can address those more personally right now. If no one is here from these addresses, then obviously we're going to, these people probably already have been notified anyway. So 202 North Main, 205 North Main, 210 North Main, 213, 222, 219, 406. All right, no one's here. So essentially, those are the only lead service lines on Main Street. Most of them, all the lead will be taken care of for the one that's complete. The rest of them just have whips off the main. The lead whip essentially is right off the main where it's connecting in, and those get taken care of when we have the new water main that'll be installed in those areas. Like Troy mentioned, the water main from Second all the way pretty much to Arnold is all getting replaced and getting upsized. There's a lot of 4-inch main, old, small, inefficient. And then there is one plastic service line that just has a lead whip that'll be replaced along with the contract on this side. The homes that do have the lead service line that goes into the house will be taken care of by the city through a separate contractor. So it'll be handled by the city. So if there are questions, problems that arise kind of during the construction, you can certainly call the city office, email, whatever. You can let me know. We can let these guys know for certain. The pamphlet you guys are going to have is going to have content information for both the RE out there, so we're going to make sure this is very transparent and you guys know what's going on. Homeowners will be notified, about when something's going to change, when it's going to affect their home, access, all these different things, so it's totally clear what's going on. So if something does change, it's going to affect the homeowner, you're going to know about it. So.
You make sure you bring a pamphlet home, because the number on the back of that pamphlet goes to my phone, so if you have any issues, you can reach me right away.
Yeah, so I don't know, Don, if you have anything construction related?
Nothing, I'm just hoping we're gonna have a good season this year and get things done with little to no headaches. There's always a headache or two. Every job has a headache. I'm just hoping they're gonna be kind of minimal on this job. I'm looking forward to getting moving. there's any questions you guys have directly for construction, maybe feel free to talk to me and I'll get things ironed out for you, hopefully.
Yeah, I think if you've got any questions on kind of the overview of the project or any questions about construction or what we plan on doing, this is the time. If there's nothing specific, we're more than happy to, take a look at the map if you want or discuss anything personally, we can certainly do that. So does anybody have any questions?
So let's do this. I'd like to tell you a little bit how we're paying for this, because I think that's an important part of that.
Okay.
And then we'll take general questions, and if you want specific ones, we'll break up and go to the map where your home's at. So for us to get this money, it took probably 2 or 3 years through a group called CMAP that comes out of Chicago. It's where your federal dollars go to. It's actually metropolitan planning. And then it comes out to the Kendall Kane Council of Mayors, which I sit on and represent the city. So we go there, and with our engineers, we put in our projects, we wait for approval, and then we find out what level of approval that we have. So these projects take several years to get the funding mechanism, and then not only for us to construct the project, then as you can also see, like Latham Street, we've yet to close that project, even though it's been done. September will be a year. So this is a $5.9 million project. As you can see, the federal government sometimes is generous in the funds they make available. Sometimes everything dries up and it closes. So we think the timing was good for us to get these dollars, because they may not be there again. Anything local, such as the sewer and the water and some of our other projects, all have to be paid out of our local funds. So we use things like motor fuel tax, which you pay at the pump. We use some of our other dollars that we'll be using to pay for this project, probably out of our general fund. So $5.9 million, we know at least 2.45 is directly from the city's funds. So we've saved up money over time. You'll see that in our fund balance in our audit. We had a report, I think, the end of year April report our treasurer gave. We had about $12 billion cash on hand. So we'll start to use part of that for this particular project. So mostly this is federal dollars that we've acquired. Sometimes there's STP funds or other funds that come through the state of Illinois. But for the most part, we're going to use a pretty good chunk of this for our local funds. So one of the questions on Latham Street was, why don't we replace every part of the sidewalk? Well, we're stretching every dollar that we have. So if we don't have to fix it, we don't. If it's still good, we'll pair up to it and match it. And that allows us to use our dollars some other place, because we have at least 2 other streets we're doing in future years in the community as part of a review project. Kurt, is it 60% of our streets were failed when I took office? I think that's kind of where we're at, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so the street index number was I think it was like a 42. It was the rating of the streets, which about 75 or 80% of the streets in Sandwich were either a poor or very poor rating is kind of where we were at. And the 60% was kind of that level of it was just gone.
Yeah, so we're of the perspective that when we open a street, we want to open the ground. So Latham makes good sense. It's a major tributary. It's also part of our federal route to the hospital. Main Street's the same way, except for one block. We have to do one block that's not on the federal route, just strictly out of local funds. But we're going to open up the ground and replace everything there as well. So that's part of a master plan that we put in place, that as we start branching out with our major, I was going to say tributaries, but that's water, major roadways, that we're making these improvements for our community. So I was on the council, actually over in that seat over there, in maybe 2000 when we looked at the first overlay from probably Pleasant to where that seam is, right by Shell gas station. So that's how long that's been there. So for us to tear it up has been a 20-year overlay. So this is a major project. As Don, I think, mentioned, or Troy, we're pouring concrete underneath there, so that's a better surface for us. So I think that's, what do we estimate? We hope we can get 50 years out of the bottom layer of that. For its stability, is that about right, or 30 to 50 years?
Around there, right? That the FDR base course is gonna last longer than the asphalt will. And we'll have a few replacements of the asphalt in the interim before the base course is.
Yeah,
past the service life.
and to be clear, so the stone underneath is being mixed with cement, essentially. The agent in concrete that binds it. So it's going to mix with that stone and it's going to turn it rock hard.
Yes.
So that's going to feel like concrete, and then we're going to be paving the asphalt layer on top of that. And it's going to be at a very, very strong base and strong
So
pavement
the
section.
sidewalk at Henderson that's completely crumbled and gone, That's gonna get replaced as well as other sidewalks, so it'll make our downtown look better. It'll make it better for all of us that walk or drive, and that's a major part that feeds into our downtown and our hospital, so.
Yeah, and then also the first section on the southern end from Second Street, or from Center to Second, is going to be all concrete as well. And that's gonna help with the heavier traffic loads you see from Henderson's and from the downtown area. So that concern has been met, knowing we didn't wanna bring asphalt back in that picture with turning movements of trucks and things like that in a more heavily industrial area part of the street.
What are we gonna do for that two-layer step in that first block from Center where you have a step up and they have another step? What are we doing with that sidewalk there? Is that gonna be the same or?
Explain that one.
Yes, so we actually have a fairly unique solution for that. One of the issues that we had in the very early part of the project, the feasibility part of the design process, is IDOT, the state, was concerned about us being able to maintain good access into the buildings and businesses on the west side of the road in the downtown district. So if you look, or if you ever walk around down there, there's all these big steps upward. Those actually are not compliant in terms of accessibility per the ADA. So we are actually, the first section of the roadway is actually going to be put into a cross slope from, it's called a super elevation, from the west side to the east side. So rather than a typical crown section, we're gonna be sloped from one side to the other. And that'll allow us to raise the sidewalk entrance, sidewalk to the elevation of the entrances, and we can be, we can't be perfectly compliant, and the state was okay with that, but we can be as compliant as is geometrically possible, given the constraints that we had to design within. So the state has found our design to be acceptable, and that's the solution. Like I said, it is a unique solution, and it'll be a little bit of a challenge to transition into that section, but we've been working on that for a while, so.
Anybody here in the audience that's a business owner? Okay, if you do know of anyone, we don't want to impact their business in a negative way, so we'll always work through our engineering staff. And I do want to thank our council. Our council took this project down several years ago and approved it, and then we had to figure out how to make it work financially, so. All right, questions from the audience that you want to ask about your property or anything along the route? This is where we have all the experts here, so this is the time to ask all the hard questions.
We would ask that everybody make sure they speak into the microphone, as this is on YouTube, so they were having a hard time hearing. So please make sure you can come up. Anybody with questions, you can come up and speak in the microphone, or
So who here actually lives on Main Street? Yeah, go ahead.
come on up.
Can you elaborate on the sanitary sewer?
So the question was, can we elaborate on the sanitary sewer?
Yes.
What's the plan, what's there, what are you taking out?
Yep, so there's two sections. There's a section between Second and Third, and then there's a section between, Arnold. You know what, let me, I think it's Arnold and Boulevard?
So Boulevard is one of the oldest streets in town from about Elmwood up. There's a gap there. It's on the 1871 plat book.
It's the sections of the sanitary sewer that there's some bellies in there, and there's some deficiencies between the manholes that were found to hold, deflection that was not right. So fixing those and making sure that the grade works properly through all the sanitary sewer that's there.
Yeah, Second and Third, and then Arnold and Boulevard. You don't quite go all the way to Boulevard. It stops about, I would say, 150 feet north of Boulevard. There's two manholes that, as Kurt had mentioned, whether it's back pitched or just very flat. Anytime you have an older installations of sanitary sewer, sometimes that'll happen where they just they weren't installed quite right in terms of grade, or they had a really difficult geometry they were dealing with, and they end up either too flat or back pitched. So we're looking to correct those so that we don't have stagnant sewer waters just kind of sitting there, which is what happens when you have that issue with the back pitch.
And we'll be lining and improving any manholes along Main Street.
Yeah, all the manholes, the existing manholes out there are gonna be all lined, so that's part of that.
Are you expanding the pipe to a larger size?
The pipe is not being changed in size, the pipe has plenty of capacity. Yep.
See, one of the things we have is we have a lot of old infrastructure, so we have a lot of storm water that infiltrates that, which puts demand on the system. So the goal is hopefully this will fix that, and then that also help with our capacity.
Yeah, like the mayor said, I&I, if you've ever heard of that term, so inflow and infiltration, it gets into the sewer pipes when they get older, leaking through the joints, leaking into the manholes, and that's what the lining and the new sewer is gonna help seal all that up, because you want your sanitary sewer to be sealed.
Okay, so who's out here that has a house on Main Street? Okay. Live on a corner. All right, questions? Chris, you have that big old house. How are you gonna get in and out of your parking space? And what are you gonna do for all that time?
Up to these guys, I guess. I'll park in the lot off of Wolf and walk.
So we do have, as a part of the specifications for traffic control, resident access, the contractor is actually, if they're gonna be doing, whether it's the concrete driveway or the concrete curb and gutter or the sidewalk across the drive, in most cases, all three will be done. But anytime there's a crossing of an access, the contractor is required per our specs to stage it. So they're gonna have to pour one side and have that back open and usable before they can switch over and do the removal on the other side. So in the same way that we're staging the roadway, one lane at a time, there's a specification for them to stage each access one side at a time as well. So there may be some cases, you know, with very, very narrow driveways where that may not necessarily be possible, but in that case, we'll work with each individual resident to make sure one way or another we can make that replacement as little burdensome as possible.
What will their driveway width be when the project's done compared to what it is now?
They're all remaining the same with.
Will there be a disruption to the sewer?
There will be some potential for some disruption to sewers when we're replacing the sewer main. We do have a bypass operation that we have specified for the main to keep things flowing so that we're not creating any major backups. But in general, whether it's a sanitary sewer service or a water service, transferring old to the new, there will be a disruption for all of those service replacements, water and sewer, and those will be individually coordinated with each property owner as they're, you know, imminent.
Real quick. Yeah, before we interrupt any kind of water service or sewer service, there will be a knock on your door. We're not gonna just shut you guys off. Hate to be in the middle of a shower in the morning, have your water cut off on you. So there will be a notification given, so there is no situation like that. So there's gonna be a disruption in water, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes for water service. Sanitary a little bit longer, so maybe a half hour, but again, we'll let you know before it actually happens. There's never gonna be a time where you really can't use it, but we'll give you a little heads up when time comes.
Question behind you.
Yeah, just on that real quick, the goal of sanitary and water service, as far as the replacement goes and switching over, the goal is that we do it when you guys are away and you don't know what's happening. That's the goal, is that if you guys are at work, hey, let us know when you got it done, you know, we can kind of coordinate that with you guys, because if you guys are in there using things, and we don't want to disrupt things, we want to make sure you guys are fully aware, you know? We're not gonna do it at 7 in the morning, you're trying to get ready for work.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
North of Pleasant Street, or Arnold, the road substantially changes. What's going to go on as you go north on Main Street past Arnold?
So there's no curb.
You talking about the width and no curb situation? Well, the geometry doesn't change as we go north. There's no way to get the road wider past that point because the right-of-way doesn't exist. And there's no curb and gutter, and you can't really put curb and gutter and change that profile based on the grades that are existing. So the road just gets improved. There's additional storm sewer that's being added on sections up in the north end that help drainage. That is the improvements that are being done up there on the corner, especially at Pleasant. There's some areas that have some flooding that we're adding some storm sewer in those corners to improve the drainage. That's one improvement up there. But the width, no curb and gutter, that still stays the same.
So one thing I would like to remind staff of is that we need to notify all the surrounding first responders that use Main Street for ambulance service of our schedule. We also will put it on our website, so you can see a daily or weekly update of what's been accomplished and what the construction project looks like. These are some, we hadn't done construction this large in 20-plus years, so we learned a lot from the Latham Street project of do's and don'ts. So Jeff here, our administrator, will make sure that we keep updates on our webpage as well as our staff. So our goal is to communicate. When they said that, they'll notify you. I think we also hang tags with notification. We'll flag your house as well, let you know if there's going to be the water sewer project starting there. So you can also call ahead if you have questions.
Well, and I will say, as far as the disruption to water, one of the things that we are doing is the type of connections that we're making to the crossing water mains that are supplying the main we're replacing. We're doing what's called pressure connections, which means it reduces the amount of shutdowns that we have to do to sections of main, so that we can keep the water main as live as much as we can to, again, reduce those disruptions. And then one other scope point that we forgot to mention, my apologies, the street lighting in the downtown section is also going to get replaced, and it's going to get replaced stylistically to what's similar to what's at the center and main intersection already.
So it'll look a lot nicer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt anybody. I had 3 people email me over the last week asking me if the coordination with utilities was going to be a little bit more fine-tuned than it was over on Latham, where ComEd wasn't a month behind or whatever it was, and NICOR, everybody's communicating better together so the project can move smoothly.
The question was just about whether we would anticipate delays with our utilities as we've seen with Latham Street. And I believe the answer to that is there are a lot fewer utilities on this one, right, Troy? Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, there's fewer utilities and there's fewer conflicts. ComEd specifically, we've been working with since very early in the process, and we've adjusted our design at a few points to reduce any proximity issues we had to their poles. So there are 2 or 3 poles that are close to some storm sewer installations that ComEd had some concerns about. We've been coordinating with them directly, and rather than replacing poles, which would mean delays related to ComEd, they were willing to work with us and brace those poles during construction so we can get by those poles with that storm sewer and move on without having to without needing them to relocate, because obviously we wanted to minimize our delays. And ComEd, you know, when you have an electric relocation delay, it's a long delay because it's a complex thing to move.
Jane, do you have a question?
Yeah, Jane did.
What will be the detour pattern set up?
It'll be Knights to Castle to Center.
Question was the detour.
And in both stages, we'll be maintaining northbound traffic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of big trucks at Henderson there that are regularly on Main Street. Wondering, number one, why they're on there in the first place, because I thought originally when Henderson built their lot in the back that there wasn't supposed to be the big truck traffic on Main. Is there gonna be some kind of a, regulation for Henderson not to have those big trucks on Main?
So the question was about larger trucks doing deliveries at Henderson Engineering there right on Main Street. And we've discussed this with Henderson. I believe we've got a meeting early next week to talk about some of these things. But they have moved the bulk of their deliveries to the Second Street delivery spot. But the way that their facility is laid out, they still have to take their steel deliveries off of Main Street. And that's part of the reason that we're working on making sure that the road is reinforced in that area. I don't think we're ever going to be able to just say, no, we can't allow you to do any on Main Street. But I was speaking with them earlier today, and it was 4 or 5 a week that are coming in for deliveries. So most of the big stuff that goes out of that facility goes out on the Second Street dock. So I know we're going to work with them and try and route things as best we can.
On the thing, it says that water main is being replaced from Second Street to Arnold Street for water quality. What does that mean for the water main from Arnold up to the hospital? Is it newer? Is it in good shape?
So the question was regarding the water and water main replacement on Main Street.
Yep. So the 4-inch main now, it reduces flow in the system. So, and in addition to quality issues, it's also kind of a fire flow issue. If you've got smaller mains, your capacity to deliver water for fire flow, that's an issue. And then anytime you've got choke points in your system and it reduces the flow, it creates the possibility of sort of stagnant areas in the system that are not circulating well. So the more you open up your system, the more freely water flows and the better your water quality is.
So, but it's not going to be replaced from Arnold up to Pleasant
That's correct.
because
That's just the limits that were defined for the project. And then operationally, are there any other issues specifically between these limits?
I think it's already an 8-inch main.
Okay.
North of there.
Okay.
So that's a proper size.
So the response was that it already has a larger main size there.
How big is it?
8-inch.
What is it?
8-inch.
8-inch, north of Arnold?
8 or 10, it might be, I had to check the limits of those. It's either an 8 or a 10.
North
I
of
know that,
Arnold.
I know that up in that area, there was some water main work that was done in the past, and there was some 12-inch and 10-inch water main that was replaced up north up there. I believe it was at Arnold, and this was what Tom Horick was, with the city, that some of that stuff was done. I don't remember if it was 8 years ago or so. I don't know if, I wasn't around, so I don't remember.
Okay, other questions? Okay, so at this time, if you have a home on Main and you want to go to the map in the back, we'll help you find your property. And we'll have the engineers come back to talk to you a little bit more about that and answer any direct questions you might have about your property, especially those of you that maybe live on a corner, may have a service that maybe comes from a different location. And again, the accessibility. We did that with the Latham Street project. Seemed like it helped people get a better understanding of the project when it was more about their block or their property. Okay? Okay, don't everybody run at once.
Hey, Kurt,